David here with Figboot on pens, back again with another fountain pen review. One of my favorite things about going to pen shows, back when we could go to pen shows, was discovering something new, or at least something new to me. Back in 2019, while at the Atlanta show, I came across the table of Matthew Martin, who is the gentleman behind the brand MCM pens. Matthew was displaying some very nice metal pens that really caught my eye. Matthew's an interesting guy. His dad is a well-known knife maker, R.J. Martin. So Matthew grew up watching his dad create high-quality products from scratch with his hands and really learned a lot about the production and creation process from someone who really knew what they were doing. He began by creating tactical pens for the knife community. Over the last year or so, I'd kept in touch with Matthew and also kept an interested eye on his work. Matthew was nice enough to send along 5 of his pens for me to show you, and those would be the 5 different sizes of his OG line. A big thanks go out to Matthew for providing these pens on loan for review. And later on, I will let you know if all of these pens will be going back to him or if any will be finding a way into my own collection. What I'm going to do today is show you those 5 different models that Matthew currently offers. I'll go over some of the parts and features of each, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about them. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. In order to get a closer look at Matthew's handiwork, please join me over here at camera 2. To begin with, from smallest to largest, we have the OG1, and OG just is short for original. That's what he named his very first design, and the OG moniker just stuck. Then we have the OG Slim. Then we have the OG Thick, and the OG Fat. And then finally, we have the OG Chonk. And it is very chunky indeed. Now, these are just some of the material options. I'll put a link to Matthew's site in the notes below, but each of these models can be mixed and matched with a number of materials and overall looks. There are a large number of options available to customize your pen to your specific tastes. In regard to some size comparisons for some other metal pens, here we have the Karas Pen Company ink. And then here it is with a pen I reviewed recently, which is the Enso Italia. And then finally, here it is with a Retro 51 Tornado. Now, in regard to weight, these pens are not messing around. These are not lightweight aluminum pens by any means. Just to show you some of the weight comparisons, when it comes to the OG1, you're talking about 39 grams. Why all of a sudden my tear go off there? There we go. When we're talking about the Slim, then we're talking about 50 grams. For the Thick, you're talking about a whopping 86 grams, almost 87 grams. This is the copper version. And then for the Fat, we're talking about 61 grams. And then finally for the Chonk, we're talking about 83 grams. So these are some pretty hefty pens. That while they are hefty, they are very usable. These pens, especially larger ones, are designed for folks who like their pens to be on the hefty side. I will say, though, it is not weight just for the sake of weight. While they are on the heavy side, the weight is very evenly distributed. Just as an example, the Karas Pen Company ink you saw earlier, this one I believe is the heaviest pen in my collection, and that one comes in at 119 grams. And I like it very much. It really works for me, and so do these Martin pens. Okay, let's take a look at these pens individually. Let's just get these other ones out of the way first. To begin with, we have the OG1. I really like the design of this pen. It's unlike anything else I've ever seen before. It's made from bronze and zirconium. The distinguishing feature of this model is the grooved cap and barrel. Here is the bronze part, and then this is the zirconium part. And so this part here is actually metal. It kind of looks like a plastic feed, but it is metal and it is very sturdy. It's not like these fins are going to be breaking or bending. Now, what I love about this pen is that the exterior grooves have a tapered design. And so it's hard to see here, but you can, it's a design like you would typically find on a barrel as well as the cap, but the underlying metal is all the same width. And so that the grooves are thicker here and get more shallow toward the end of the barrel. And the same thing goes for the cap, but it's not as pronounced. They're thinner here and then thicker and deeper when it gets more towards the end of the cap. And I like that the cap and barrel are slightly different in regard to the groove depth. The cap twists off, and underneath you have a number 6 JoWo stainless steel nib. Each of these models are available in all sizes from extra fine all the way up to a 1.1 stub, and there's even a flex option that you will see here in a bit. The threads or the cap threads on this pen are plastic on this particular model, and I'm really loving this grooved section as well. It is incredibly sticky, and what I mean by that is it's not tacky, it's sticky. What I mean by that is that once you get your grip on there, it is not moving at all. This might be the most solid gripping section I've ever tested on a pen. And I like the tactile feeling on the grooves on your hand on the section, as well as the grooves here on your hand while you're writing. And I think the look of carrying over the groove design from the section, from the barrel to the section, looks really nice. This pen is not designed to post, which is fine. And I don't believe any of the pens I'm going to show you today should be posted. So that is the OG one, and I think it is a pretty cool pen. Next up, we have the OG Slim. This model here has a zirconium barrel and cap with the trim on the ends being titanium. This model is roughly the same length as the OG one, but as the name implies, it is slightly slimmer. The cap unscrews. This model, as well as the rest of the pens that I'm going to show you, do have metal threads. And underneath, we have a flex nib that I mentioned. This is a flex nib which has been customized by Kirk Spear of Pen Realm, and he calls this nib the Secretary of Deflex. It begins its life as a number 6 JoWo stainless steel nib, and that Kirk turns it into something special. The section is straight, and it has a dual-purpose spiral design. One, I think it looks very cool, in my opinion. And second of all, it does a really good job of helping you maintain your grip on this metal section. I don't find it or any of the grips I'm showing you today to be slick at all. Now, with the metal threads and the metal section, when you're capping, some of these pens, the section just barely fits into the cap, and so there's little room for air. I found that the threads hit the section on a regular basis when I cap. Over time, I'm unsure if that will cause any scratching at all. But it's something that I would be on the lookout for. Okay, let's show you how this flex nib performs. So we have the Matthew Martin. And this is the OG Slim. And I know that my regular handwriting doesn't necessarily lend itself to show off a flex nib that well, but the ink that I'm using here is Lamy Petrol. This is what the ink looks like. It was a limited edition ink that Lamy produced a while back and was really one of their more favorite inks over the last few years. And so it was one of those that was really popular, and I think it matches well with this pen. This is what it looks like in regard to some Organic Studio Walden Pond, which has a similar base color, but the Walden Pond is virtually all sheen. And then also this is what it looks like with the Mont Blanc petrol, which is more of a blue petrol than a green petrol like the Lamy. In regard to flex, I find that it flexes very easy. I'm barely putting any pressure on this at all, and you can get a wide amount of flex here. And that I find that with very little pressure, it's just a very thin line, and it doesn't take much pressure before you can get a very thick line. And I feel that if you go at an even pace, then the feed does a good job in keeping up. With any flex pen, if you just go crazy, then eventually here you're going to start to railroad a little bit as the feed can't keep up. But if you're writing, we'll say at a reasonable pace, then I've found that the feed does a good job in keeping up with the writing here. Next up, we have the OG Thick. It is slightly longer than the OG one, and as the name would apply, a bit thicker. This one here is copper and titanium. When uncapped, I really like the contrast of the titanium section with the copper body. I mentioned it earlier, but even though this pen is heavy, I find it very usable. The weight is very evenly distributed. These, as well as all of the other pens I'm showing you today, are cartridge converter pens, accepting standard international cartridges, and a converter is provided. And suffice to say, with all of the metal in each of these pens, that eyedropping any of them would not be recommended. Okay, 3 down, 2 to go. Next up, we have the OG Fat. It is longer and slightly thicker compared to the previous pen, the OG Thick. And this model here is all titanium. This model has a really nice size to it. I find the metal threads to operate rather smoothly, and that's the case on all of these pens. And they're not very thick, and so that you can remove the cap in just a little bit over a single rotation. And I think that it looks nice with the all titanium look of the titanium section as well as the titanium barrel. And it fits very nicely in the hand. Okay, final pen, and this is the big boy. This is the OG Chonk. How can you not like a pen called Chonk? And that name is appropriate. It is large and thick, but as all of the other pens in this series, it is very usable. This pen is titanium, and the barrel and cap have a flame treatment. It brings out some really nice colors in the material. The only thing is that I would say the colors are a bit muted. While I don't need a rainbow pen, which seems to be a bit of a trend lately, I just wish the colors here were slightly more vibrant. Not a ton, just a little. One of the things that really impressed me with all of these pens is the build quality. For example, on this pen, since it's all titanium, I thought that maybe these end pieces were maybe taped off or something like that during the treatment to give the appearance of separate pieces. But no, they are separate. They are on all of the other pens as well. But the end pieces has such a tight fit and no seam at all. You could rub your finger across the seam and not really feel it at all. You can't really feel a seam. It really wasn't until I looked at it under a loupe that I could see the seam. It is high quality craftsmanship. Now, when you unscrew this section is very chonky as well. It is very thick, but again, this spiral groove really does a good job of helping me maintain my grip. This nib here is a broad, and let's just do a bit of a writing sample with it. So this one is the OG Chonk. And this pen is very chonky. This broad nib is fairly smooth with just a little bit of feedback. It's very nice. In regard to some fast writing, there's no issue with that feed keeping up at all. Okay, Here are these pens again. In regard to price, these pens are not inexpensive, but you are receiving a well-crafted pen that is made by an individual artisan. Items like that are typically going to come in with a higher price tag. And then on top of that, these pens are constructed out of some high-quality materials. The OG1, this particular model sells for $395. The OG Slim with these materials, again, you can customize them, and so the price is going to change, but this one is $350. The OG Thick, as pictured here, is $295. The OG Fat is $385, and the OG Chunk is $495. As I mentioned previously, there are different options in regards to nibs and materials, so as you customize the pen, the price will change accordingly. Now, in the end, I have decided to hold on to one of these pens, and the rest are going to be sent back to Matthew. Now, which do you think I will choose? Now, the OG Slim with the zirconium body and very cool flex nib is nice, but there's others I liked a little bit more. The OG Thick with the copper and titanium looks really sharp, but I already have a couple of copper pens and wanted something a little bit different. There is the OG Fat, which is a very nice size, and I like this sleek all titanium look, but I was looking for something a little more visually unique. So that leaves us with two. We have the OG1 with the very cool grooved body, and this might be one of my favorite individual features I've seen on a pen in a very long time. Very unique. And then there is the OG Chunk in all of its chunky flamed titanium glory. And I will be keeping the Chunk. How can you not love a pen called Chunk? And to be clear, what I mean by keeping is that I will be messaging Matthew and asking how much he will sell this pen to me for. So there is an overview of the offerings of Matthew Martin. I would highly recommend checking out his site. He does some fantastic work. And if you enjoy metal pens, he is making some of the best out there on the market right now. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.